She's taught the lesson, she's actually got me the best results. Not once has she done anything that is out of order.
I think they have to recognise that they are role models in the community.
They have the right to their private life and the choices they make.
Their private lives to some extent their own, but as soon as it impinges on their professional life, then I'm afraid the two cannot be kept separate.
Entirely inappropriate behaviour.
And this whole discussion has been about somebody who's outstanding being hounded by people who aren't.
You clearly haven't listened to my previous advice when you tumbled out of the cupboard.
Should personal misbehaviour outside school lead to sanctions within school? Should staff face criticism for espousing a colourful life after the bell has rung at the end of the day? Though our expert panel can't talk openly about actual incidents they've encountered at their schools, they have agreed to discuss an imaginary case study. The moderator is Mike Baker.
Well, hello and welcome. Let me paint a little scenario for you. You are the appointments panel and you are appointing an English teacher. You haven't had many applications, I'm afraid. You have had one teacher who looks particularly promising. Her name is Fleur. She is a very young teacher, but she's got a PhD. You've just got one little niggling worry because she wears a nose ring. Gary Lewis, you are one of the head teachers of this school. Are you concerned at all? Will you raise this issue?
I'd be concerned by the fact she was wearing a nose ring because I'd be looking at the implications for what the youngsters would be feeling. It would be a negative start for her, unfortunately.
There was another candidate who had very dangly earrings, little parrots in, rather distracting. You didn't mention it when she was sitting in front of you, so is it reasonable to ask Fleur about the nose ring?
Well, there is a difference. I mean, you know, if you were to come in with studs through your lips or something, that would be an indication of a certain approach and lifestyle, as a nose
And
stud
does
may do.
lifestyle affect teaching?
It certainly would do, yes.
Okay. Richard Marshall, you're also in this job share. You're the other head teacher. Do you have any worries about it?
No.
Absolutely none at all?
None at all.
Okay, and the fact that she didn't remove it for the lesson doesn't worry you
Not
whatsoever? Okay. Francis, you are Chair of Governors at the school and you're on the appointments panel as well. Now, you weren't quite so distracted by the nose ring, so you noticed something else, and that was that as she sat down, she had a fairly short top and it rode up slightly, and you could see that she had a belly button ring on it. Does that worry you?
It's telling me that perhaps she may not have the best judgment for the appropriate situation. In other words, you come for a job interview, you may not be wanting to show a bare midriff in a professional position like a teaching position.
Okay, and it so happens that Fleur has an identical twin sister, Rose, and she's a primary school teacher. And she's applied for a job at your school. Stephen Spooner, you're a primary head. Much the same scenario, really. She's come along, she looks terrific, but she, like her twin sister, also has a nose ring and a belly button ring. Now, you might worry perhaps in a secondary school about imitation by pupils, but that's not really an issue for your age pupils. So in a primary school, it's not a problem, is it?
No, it wouldn't be an issue for me, although I would say I would probably think the midriff showing might be a problem in terms of her role model.
But you're not worried otherwise? Okay.
No, absolutely not.
Rebecca Kellaway, you are a governor at the primary school. Would you have any concerns?
I think I'd be concerned that she came to interview for a job dressed like that, but it wouldn't affect, I think, her capabilities as a teacher. And I think.
But would you want her to stop? Would you say something, do you think?
I think it could be appropriate to talk about standards at the school, because every school has standards, and it's appropriate that teachers follow that.
Okay. Richard, coming back to you, because you didn't seem too concerned at all, but your school has a very clear code for the pupils that they're not allowed to have earrings, they're certainly not allowed to have nose rings or belly button rings. So it's going to be a bit hard for the kids if you tell them off and there's a teacher with these, isn't it?
Well, two things. One, the belly button, you said that it was only seen when something unfortunate happened and it pulled up as, I presume that she's not wearing, you know, so it's not permanently on show, so it was an unfortunate glimpse of something that perhaps I shouldn't have been looking at anyway. And I wouldn't want to, I wouldn't want to go down that line. I didn't notice anything. Again, if these girls were kind of Asian, then they might be wearing that, and it might be there might be a cultural thing going on there. I think that these days it's quite a fashionable statement anyway, wherever you're coming from, and I think that in the school where I'm trying to get an education that is appealing to the youngsters and exciting, and you've said that this is an exciting, interesting English teacher.
Yes.
I don't actually see this as a negative thing. I actually think this is quite an exciting prospect.
Good. Well, you've decided that you will appoint Fleur and Rose, as it happens. Now, Gary, it is your habit at the beginning of the new term to invite the newly appointed teachers to come in and to have a tea party and just to get to know each other. It seems a nice idea. And you're waiting out in the car park to help show them where to come in. You suddenly hear an enormous vroom, and in comes a Porsche. So you know it's one of the new teachers, because you know none of your current teachers has the Porsche, and you are worrying whether you may be offered too high a salary.
We just check they haven't stolen mine first.
But you won't be too surprised to know that stepping out of that Porsche is Fleur.
Right.
But she also has a little sticker in her rear window, and it says, "Legalised cannabis now." Are you having any worrying thoughts?
I would be having some worrying thoughts. I mean, first and foremost, I'm looking to appoint the best teachers. But in my experience, that always goes hand in hand with good judgment in a range of different areas as well. And there are some warning signals already with the nose ring, the belly button ring and so on. This is another one that's beginning to say, well, look, here's another one that you're putting up on the rack here that I'm staying aware of. But at that point, perhaps not.
Okay, it's a very busy day at the school, Francis, as you're also having a governor's meeting. Is it something you're going to raise with the head teacher?
I think it will certainly be something that we need to be aware of. Again, it's showing another poor judgment on her part when you're a role model for young people.
Okay. Richard, now because you come at a slightly different angle, you're not so distracted by the legalised cannabis sticker, but you see another sticker down the side of the car, and that says support Greenpeace. Is that any problem for you at all?
No, not at all. I don't find any of this problematic. I mean, I'm focused on getting a good English teacher in the school. She's done well in the interview. All this is
political
something
views
that
don't matter.
I couldn't care less whether she votes
What about
Tory.
the fact that the political views are advertised on her car in the car park?
I really don't mind.
Okay, well, let's see what happens, because you've got some other new teachers coming in. One of them is a new assistant head who you've appointed. He's an older man, he's married with 2 children. You notice that he too has a sticker in his rear window, and his says, "Vote BNP." Now are you worried?
I would certainly ask him whether the views of the BNP were his views.
I'm Phil, yes, they are. They are my views. I vote for them, yes.
I would then seriously be questioning my own judgment in appointing you, because one of the things that he's going to have to be doing is working in a multicultural environment. From my point of view, this is explicitly anti the values of the school.
Julie Davies, you are the union rep, and although I am an assistant head, I've actually stayed a member of the union, and I'm coming to see you because I think this is grossly unfair.
I think other people here have been more generous than has been my experience. I wouldn't really expect a teacher to express so openly support for any political party. I would certainly not want to know that anybody on my staff or that I was representing was a member of the BNP.
OK, well, term gets underway. Now, Ruth Smith, you are the head of English, and you're teaching a lesson, Ruth, in the class, and it's a lesson on Romeo and Juliet, and the pupils are looking up something on the computers about Romeo and Juliet. The group of boys in the far corner are sort of giggling, so you just wander over to investigate. And I'm afraid they're not really looking at anything to do with Romeo and Juliet, because up on the screen has come a website for a lap dancing, pole dancing club. And you're about to sort of switch the computer off when something catches your eye which is slightly worrying, and it's not actually from the neck down of this dancer you're worried about, it's the neck upwards, because it's Fleur. Are you going to have a word with her about this?
I would want to check first of all that it wasn't a prank being played by the boys where they've somehow
Okay, well, it's not a prank, I'm afraid. It really is. You've had a good look. It's a genuine website.
Yeah.
You know, you can't tell until you ask her.
It's probably a bit of a cop-out, but I would probably look for some advice from somebody else first of all. My line manager, whoever my line manager
Okay,
is
well, let's
first
say
of
it's
all.
Richard. So, Richard, Ruth's passed the buck, which she's entitled to, because you earn more than her. What are you going to do?
First of all, I think that the concern would be that this could damage her, and that as a head teacher, I've got to make sure that this doesn't happen.
Okay.
And I think that would be the first conversation that I'd have with her. I'd say, you know, were you aware of this? How did it happen? What would you like to do about it?
Okay, well, look, she's come in for the interview. She's speaking to both of you. Gary, she said, look, okay, yes, it is me. Obviously it's me. I did it in the past when I was studying for my PhD. It's how I funded my way through the PhD. So it was for a good cause. What are you going to say to me?
That's an interesting dilemma because, of course, it isn't going to be compatible with her role now. If it is in the past, then I would be doing everything I can, along with Richard, to support her, making it quite clear that it shouldn't be happening again.
Okay.
I mean, a lot would depend whether she was wearing the nose stud or the belly ring, of course.
Okay, I'm Fleur. I'm really getting quite worried because I was enthusiastic. I seem to be getting in trouble all the time. So I've come to you, Julie, as my union rep. What are my rights? They can't hold this against me, can they?
Well, I actually think you've left yourself vulnerable, really. You can't expect the school not to notice something like this. You've
But it was in the
undermined-
past. I didn't know I was going to be teaching at that point. I was a PhD student.
You have to consider that it might have undermined your own authority with the children now. So
I've got to leave teaching.
no, you've had a couple of interviews with management, and you've been given guidance. It's very important that you take that on board.
You're not really reassuring me much as
Well,
Fleur.
I think, Fleur, that you're in a very difficult position.
Okay, Richard.
I don't have any problems with her lap dancing or doing whatever she's, what a pole dancing, whatever
Yes.
this thing was.
You're pretending you don't know what that is.
I
You're past
don't
my
really know. I presumably it's some sort of. You know, the question would be: is she still an effective teacher? Now we've said all along that she is.
She is.
Therefore, none of those concerns are real concerns. My only.
It's very interesting that management's taking a gentler view of this than the union rep.
I think the union rep was taking a very harsh view, as
Yes.
I might expect. If she is able, in the context of the school, to do her job, and we've said that she's an outstanding teacher, then I have no problems.
Okay. Well, as you might expect, Stephen, you're not getting off too lightly on this one because Rose, being an identical twin, can you set it aside?
I don't think so, actually. I think she's made an error of judgment in her private life, and I think her reputation would have been damaged within the community.
Okay, well, actually, Fleur's getting on very well with the rest of the staff, and she seems to be getting on particularly well with Phil, which is perhaps a bit surprising from the point of view of their political views. But Ruth, as I say, you've become a bit of a friend of hers. You know she has a partner. You know that Phil is married. You haven't seen anything that says there's definitely an affair going on, but you're a bit concerned. Are you going to speak to her as either a friend or as a head of department?
I think a friend. It would have to be in that role, just kind of from a friend's perspective, saying, you know, what is going on here, and if she tells me that there is something more, you know, as any friend would, spelling out the kind of consequences of what she's doing.
Okay, Gary, you were walking down the corridor in the school one day, and out of the store cupboard tumble Phil and Fleur, laughing and giggling. Are you going to say anything to them at that point? Are you going to call them in together separately, or what are you going to do?
I'd call them in separately, and I'd be having a very, very clear word with both of them that their private lives to some extent their own, but as soon as it impinges on their professional life, then I'm afraid the two cannot be kept separate.
Okay.
i.e. it's unacceptable.
Well, I'm Fleur again, and I've come to see you again, Julie, as my union rep. I mean, I'm certainly getting value for money out of my membership, aren't I? I'm in trouble again, Julie. Will you defend me, please? Because I'm worried that they've really got it in for me.
I mean, I'll defend you if you are in trouble by saying people very regularly meet their partners at work. There's nothing intrinsically wrong with having an affair with somebody in the workplace. It's just that it can't happen in the workplace.
Just got to be discreet.
You've got to be very discreet about it,
Okay.
because once again, it's something that undermines authority.
Okay. All right. Well, we try not to do anything in the school, but we do meet up in a local pub, and actually it's a pub that some of the staff use, and so some of the governors use as well, Francis. So, and you spot Phil, the assistant head, and Fleur, your new teacher, canoodling in the pub.
I would be speaking to Gary. I mean, clearly, you know, everyone knows that Phil's married. Fleur apparently has a partner. They're being quite overt about their relationship in front of staff and, more importantly, in front of students. Yes. And, you know, I need to have confidence that you're going to take some action to explain to them that really, as role models in front of students,
albeit
and
out of school,
with respect, in terms of respect to their peer group, you know, it's not a healthy situation that they're creating.
Okay, Gary, you going to discipline them?
I'm not disciplining them at this stage, but I'm now having words that are a little bit more than just friendly advice.
Mm-hmm.
They're words that clearly it is unacceptable. It is damaging their professional standing in the school, and therefore, by definition, eventually will damage their effectiveness as a teacher. That's even notwithstanding performance in the classroom. You clearly haven't listened to my previous advice when you tumbled out of the cupboard, because here you are canoodling in the local pub, and that is unacceptable, and I wouldn't be expecting to see it again. And it would be very much an informal warning that would step up a touch after that.
Okay. Stephen, Phil's a very energetic character. And he's also the liaison teacher between the secondary school and your primary school, through which he's got to know Rose. And he's also been taking her out on dates as well. So is it an issue at all? I mean, you may not approve?
I mean, I may not approve, but it wouldn't be an issue for a primary head, I don't think, because again, it's their private life. It's outside of the school boundaries, if you like, and they have the right to their private life and the choices they make. If parents would saw them in the local pub, I don't think that would be an issue for me either.
Okay, parents have seen them in the local pub, and Rebecca, they've come to complain to you as the primary governor.
I think as long as it's not impinging on the life of the school, I think the head teacher is quite right. I think if they're sort of rolling around the corridors or whatever, then obviously that impinges on the school and the pupils see it. They are entitled to a private life. I think what I would do is introduce them to the word discretion and encourage them to follow that.
Okay, and just one briefing back at the secondary school, Richard, there's a residential trip coming up. Guess which two members of staff are going on this overnight trip? Yes, it's Fleur and Phil. Are you going to cancel the trip?
No. I haven't heard anything, again, I haven't heard anything that I've got a problem with. And the fact that we're actually making judgments based on the fact that she once wore a nose ring and a belly stud, and that a few interfering parents have actually come into school and complained about my best English teacher in the school. I'm sorry, but I am not going to have my school wrecked by a few malicious rumours. And I really find it very difficult to actually understand why we've got a problem with this person who we keep saying is an excellent teacher. It's not actually doing it's not causing us any problems at all.
Well, you're very relaxed so far. Let's see if you can stay relaxed with this one, Phil and Fleur. They're a bit more discreet, they don't do anything in school, and they've stopped meeting at the pub just outside the school, which is good news. But it does mean that actually started to meet at a pub a little bit further away, which happens to be a bit closer to the lap dancing club, which is run, of course, by Fleur's partner. And as you might imagine, he pops in for a drink and he sees Phil and Fleur canoodling at the table. Now, he's a bit of a handy geezer, and of course, with a quick temper, he rushes over and he attacks Phil. Mind you, what he doesn't realise is that Phil, in his past, was an amateur boxer, and he picks himself up on the floor very quickly, and he soon starts laying into Fleur's partner. And it's a really rather nasty affray. The police eventually break it up, and almost certainly they are going to be charged with common assault. OK, it's the next day in school. Richard, your assistant head, it looks like he's been involved in a nasty pub brawl at the least, and it could be that he's going to be charged. Are you going to suspend him? I
would have to make a judgment as to how damaging this was to his effectiveness as a teacher. I would have to always keep going back to that because it happened outside of school. It was nothing to do with me. It was nothing to do with the school. He wasn't on duty as a teacher. And I think, my difficulty is that if we're going to hold teachers 24 hours a day as my pay, then I ought to be paying them for 24 hours, and I'm not. When they leave at 3 o'clock, I stop paying them. And now, as long as what I'm asking them to do is happening, i.e. teach well, in his case, manage well, retain the respect of the pupils and the local community and the school community and blah, 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 then I have no difficulties.
Colin, as the police officer attached to the school, obviously concerned about the reputation for the school, going to have a quiet word with the two head teachers. Would you recommend that, at least while the investigation goes on, that Phil should be suspended?
I'd have a discreet word with the head and say something along the lines of, did you know that Phil was involved in a punch-up in the pub and this is what happened? It rather depends on the nature of the violence, though, because there is a certain tipping point with key professionals where I would have a duty to say something.
This was a pretty violent attack. It wasn't just one hit. They're both people who are quite useful with their fists, and it was quite a nasty punch-up. It's the talk of the school. It's the talk amongst the parents. So, Francis.
I would be speaking to Gary. I mean, we've got issues. This is a member of the senior leadership team. Stepped completely out of line. There could be anger management issues, entirely inappropriate behaviour. And senior members of the leadership team at our school have a role to play in society as well as in school. I know Richard said he stops paying them at 3 o'clock, but as far as I'm concerned...
But he was attacked. He was attacked, knocked down, beaten up.
He retaliated.
He got up. Well, he was being attacked. He was beaten down. He got up, and the fact was he could handle himself, and he hit the guy back. Now, to me, that's a good role model. There's nothing poor about that.
Now, I would not hesitate, but I would suspend him at that point. Actually, for his own good, because there would be.
So you would suspend him?
I would have suspended him at that point, probably for his own good.
Got to split amongst the head teachers, but never mind.
Yes, that would be a bit tricky. Yes, it would be tricky.
Okay. Well, look. I'm Phil. I've just been suspended for something that I think I'm completely innocent. I'm going off to see my union rep again. So, Julie, I feel it's happened outside. I was defending myself. It's not reasonable, is it? You are surely on this one going to back me to management.
Of course. This is self-defence. I would want to be clear about the reason for the suspension, because as far as I'm concerned, there are only two reasons to suspend. One, because you might contaminate an investigation internally in the school, and the other, if there's a chance that this will result in some kind of gross misconduct charge, because in that case you suspend because there's an internal contradiction between keeping someone in school and then sacking them later. But I can't see this turning into gross misconduct, and there's no internal investigation in the school, so there's no reason to suspend. Garden leave, well, it may be that now is a time to cool down, get your statements written, be absolutely clear that you were in a position of being attacked.
Everyone's going to think I'm guilty if I'm told to stay at home. Time does move on, and we've reached the end of the summer term. You all breathe a huge sigh of relief that you've made it through to the summer. It's been a pretty lively year. And there's some pretty good news over the summer. Ruth, I mean, the English results from Fleur's class is just fantastic. Best you've ever had. It's going really, really well. And what's more, you've also heard that over the summer, that maybe because of the whole incident with Phil, that actually her partner has finally got round to popping the question, and they've got married. They've moved in together in the flat above the lap dancing club, but she's not dancing there. So you think, great, we're going to start the new term on a nice, even keel. But I'm afraid on the very first day of term, Fleur comes in, wants to talk to you in floods of tears. She says, I've had a terrible summer. My husband's club was raided over the summer, and they found evidence of drug dealing, hard drugs as well. What am I going to do?
I think, again, it's probably in her best interest to talk to people and to perhaps have a meeting with the head teacher directly.
Gary, what are you going to do about this?
I mean, again, it's to do with Fleur's lack of her lack of ability to make reasonable judgments in all sorts of different circumstances.
As a head teacher, do you have any say about who she marries, whether she marries?
No, I don't. No, I don't. But I would have, I would have actually probably sent her on garden leave over the previous incident as well, until it both cleared up for both their benefits. And part of their reintegration in terms of their own protection is to say, look, how can we now put this behind us and move on, because you are outstanding teachers and we want that to work. And I would have been looking at a code of conduct for them. There's no discipline and stuff going on at this particular stage, because I agree it's nothing to do with her at this stage. But I would have thought some fairly detailed personal support wouldn't go astray at this time.
OK, well, I'm afraid things are going to get worse because the police have been in, and this time they've not only raided the club, they've raided the flat that Fleur and her husband live in, and they've found cocaine, other hard drugs and so on. Does that make any difference to you? She's pretty close now to criminal activities.
Close to criminal activities. You see, so far the story has been, although we've been following it up, she hasn't done anything wrong at all, ever. She's taught the lessons. She's actually got me the best results. Not once has she done anything that is out of order. Not once, in my view.
Married inappropriately, not your business.
She can do what she likes as long as she's doing the job and it's not affecting the job. And as far as the scenario that you've painted so far, this is somebody who has been an outstanding professional in my school, who has actually better judgments because she's a better teacher than everybody else in that school, possibly apart from myself.
OK, but Colin, does this make a difference now? That it's not just in the club, which was her husband's, but actually it's in the house that she was living in. Does it make a difference to you?
For me, it flags up another worrying series of events. I would be urging the school to be really watching the situation very, very closely, and I'm going to certainly ask my colleagues to do the same.
OK, Stephen, Fleur says, I'm a strong Christian. I believe it's my duty to stand by my husband. Is she right to do that?
I think she's absolutely right to do that, and as my colleagues have said, she's actually done nothing wrong herself. I think where it's going to damage the reputation of the school, because it's going to be in the papers and so on and so forth, I would take the view that, again, garden leave might be an appropriate way of dealing with it, and then contacting the local authorities' press office to handle and manage the sort of the newspaper reporting. But she's not really done anything. She's an outstanding teacher. I think later on you might, as a head, have a word with her and just say, you've got to make some sensible choices.
OK. Let's just take this a little bit wider, Francis. I suppose what all these dilemmas are about is really whether or not we should expect higher standards of teachers than we might of other people in return for their munificent public sector salaries. Is it fair to have higher standards?
I don't think that they should have higher standards, but I think they have to recognise that they are role models in the community, and therefore whatever their standards are, their standards will be under scrutiny.
Okay, it's a tall order. Ruth, as a working teacher as well as a head of department, is that reasonable?
To be an effective teacher, you have to be aware of how your conduct will impact on your persona, if you like. And the strongest persona you can have is one where you're not infallible, that's a bit high, but you know, one where you have protected yourself.
Okay.
And I think that's really important.
Richard, do you think teachers should show a stronger ethical code, a stronger moral code than,
I'm not saying that it's going to be
somebody
stronger.
else?
I certainly think that they should have a strong ethical code, and they should actually adhere to rigorous standards of behaviour. And this whole discussion has been about somebody who's outstanding being hounded by people who aren't. And that would be my perspective on this teacher. If I've got the best teacher in the school and I've got a few parents who don't like it, I have problems with those parents, not the teacher. And I will defend this teacher's right to actually do what she's doing, as long as she's not doing anything illegal and she's not bringing the school into disrepute, which she's not.
Okay, well, we've got to the end of the year again, and you're right, Fleur is a terrific teacher. Great news, the GCSE results, the A-level results, fantastic, especially in English. Fleur's husband was convicted. He went to jail. She stood by her man, and she's waiting for him to come out. But one result of all this publicity and being in the paper and all the rest of it has been that a venture capitalist has been along to Fleur and says, I've got this great idea. You could make millions if you set up a pole dancing club for teenage girls, because they're the very group we can't get to do any exercise, and they will go for that.
I'm going to suggest if she's going to do that, she's not going to be working at the school. That's
Right.
absolutely for sure.
Okay, she's not very good at making the right decisions. So,
Clearly she's not.
Richard, what should she do? Should she, very briefly, should she, it's a yes or no, really?
I would do anything to keep her in the school.
You do anything to keep her? Okay.
Well,
I'm afraid
in the context, no.
I'm going to go lap dancing.
Professionally to keep her there.
We've reached the end of our dilemmas. Thank you all very much indeed.